Yo, what's going on YouTube? Hey, so we've got this hype video here. Don't believe the hype. We wanted to watch it with the community and see what it's all about. So we're going to watch it. We're going to talk about it. Share your thoughts. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please do leave your thoughts on it in the comments below. Open-minded. Let's do this. Before we get into this week's video, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone that's been following and supporting the channel. We've recently just passed 150 subscribers, a long ways from our goal, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has been there. Also, I've noticed that the majority of you watching the videos are not yet subscribed, so please make sure to hit that sub button and ring that notification bell so you know when our weekly videos go live for you.
Ashes of Creation, a new MMORPG being made by a small independent studio, heralded by many as the next big thing, the savior of the genre, the MMO we've all been waiting for, the one that will bring disenfranchised players together and provide the gameplay experience absolutely every MMO fan wants. Will this new MMO be the game to fix all the issues and save the entire genre? In a word, no. In many words, let's look at the original Kickstarter, the team behind it, the media hype for it, and the reality of what they currently have, and then have a grounded discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Drive-Hayes, and today I'd like to take a brief look at the upcoming MMORPG Ashes of Creation. What is it? Who's making it? And the insane levels of hype that have been generated around it. What we can come to expect from this game, and then what players are actually expecting from this game. I believe that the insane levels of hype that have been generated around this MMORPG is probably the single most damaging element currently out there for this game.
I just gotta say, I love this dude's background. This shelving with all this stuff going on, I love it. I love it. He's made a good point. I don't think this is the game for all that's going to cure all MMOs, because the studio stance is the game's not going to be for everybody. Simple. You will never make something that pleases everybody.
Their expectation is way too high for this game, and it will ultimately end up harming it more than it helps it. I've seen people in my video comments on my YouTube videos, on my Twitch streams, in my Discord, and general people on Twitter saying, don't even bother playing any other MMORPGs because Ashes of Creation is going to eventually release and just blow them all out the water. People are preaching the gospel of Ashes of Creation above all else. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a bad game at all. In fact, it's got the potential, from what we've seen, to be a very good game, even a great game, dare I say it. But it's never ever going to live up to the unrealistic expectations and the unrealistic levels of hype. People are hyping this up to such an unbelievable level that no matter how good it is, when it releases, it will ultimately disappoint people through no fault of its own.
That's an important part. I think the hype and expectation will probably backfire. I 100% agree with that statement. There is the hype can raise people's expectations to a point where it's just not achievable. And that is something that needs to be cautioned. It's only as hype as you make it out to be. Well, as a community too, though, right? I mean, yes, a lot of us are falling in love with what this game can be and what it looks like to be. I am a fan of this game already, and it's not even in Alpha 1 yet, right? I understand that. That being said, I am cautiously optimistic that it will achieve what it has set out to achieve. He does make a very good point. You need to temper your expectations. As an individual, you need to temper your expectations about what the game will be. I would rather be surprised at how good it is than disappointed that it didn't live up to my expectations. It is a bit of a clickbaity title. I feel like he's speaking to the point of the title already in the video.
Ashes of Creation is a new MMORPG described on its website as an experience where everything is permanently impacted by your actions. Explore, trade, build, and let the world take form. From your imagination through your will and into everyone's reality, what you create will be the cornerstone of the next explorer's ambition. So straight away, we've got some bold claims of interaction and player creation within a permanent shared overworld. This system has been seen before in more hardcore MMOs like Mortal Online or Life is Feudal, where players can place buildings or shared crafting items, so this is possible. It's also often used in survival games, where player-created structures are often the focus of PvP gameplay, so we'll look at this more later. Ashes of Creation is being made by Intrepid Studios. Over on their company website, we can see some quotes from the media about Ashes of Creation, with PC Gamer calling it the most anticipated MMORPG, MMORPG.com labeling it as Kickstarter's most successful MMO, and IGN saying, "We may find ourselves in love with the MMO again." That's high praise. That's exceptionally high expectations. So let's take the Kickstarter angle and have a look back at how this project began. Ashes of Creation was a Kickstarter MMO, describing itself in the opening paragraph as the rebirth of the MMO.
Most anticipated. We may find ourselves in love with the MMORPG again. These are hype building statements. They are not selling anything though. They are not saying this game is going to be amazing. They are saying that they think it could be. That's what these statements say. Kickstarter's most successful MMO? Probably. That just means that a lot of people invested into it. That means that the game generated a large Kickstarter fund. And it has continued to develop income since Kickstarter. This is all that means. This is not saying this game is going to be amazing. This is not saying that this game is going to be the best MMO ever created. That's not what these statements say. Careful on how you read into things. Say they're hopeful, right? They're excited at the potential, at the possibility, and that is what Intrepid has portrayed thus far, is potential and possibility. Execution will have to wait to be seen, and they have not been afraid to say these things. Intrepid is very self-aware, if you will. He's 100% right that the community is what is hyping this up to the point where it's going to be overhyped and expectations are going to actually exceed what Intrepid is even trying to achieve. But yeah, I just wanted to address that because I feel like he's kind of saying that these companies are saying that that they're hyping this game and it's going to be the greatest thing ever, and they're not. They're saying it could be.
Expectations. So let's take the Kickstarter angle and have a look back at how this project began. Ashes of Creation was a Kickstarter MMO, describing itself in the opening paragraph as the rebirth of the MMORPG. It then explains the evolution of the game comes down to what players decide to do. If you want a city or a marketplace or the comfort of your own home, it's up to you to build it. Or if a city is encroaching on your territory, it's up to you to destroy it. Now, giving players this level of freedom is always a gamble, because often people are more focused on the destruction instead of the creation, but we'll come back to this too. The change paragraph lists some very strange in-game weather and landscape interactions, saying the game will have quiet autumns and devastating winters, or a volcano that threatens to level a city, but then adds on one server, the volcano may never erupt. On another, the devastating winter may last 5 cycles, or with the help of a few heroes, maybe only 1. So we're going to have in-game weather and environmental damage that won't be the same on every server. The consequences paragraph says, change for change's sake means nothing without consequences, and then explains, when a player makes a choice in a quest, that choice cannot be undone. When that volcano erupts and destroys a city, the landscape is forever altered, ending with, the world will be in flux and history will remain where it should, in the hands of the players. While this whole paragraph sounds nice, quest choices in most MMOs cannot be undone anyway, so that's not really a unique point, and the consequences angle is interesting, because having personal consequences for personal actions is great design choice, but having consequences for the actions of others can often lead to griefing. If you create a house, you have a house. That's the consequence for your action. If someone else comes along and destroys your house, that's your consequence for their action. But now we get to probably the most unique selling point of the game, the node system. The Kickstarter explains, so let's just have a read. Every zone is made up of multiple nodes. Each node has a zone of influence.
He made a very good point about that consequence thing. Their action to come and destroy your stuff is your consequence. That's a very good point. The garbage man's action on your dropping your garbage can on your flowers is your consequence. But that is a good point, is that there are definitely consequences for other players' actions. And that's going to be interesting. That could be a potential grief mechanic. That could be a potential driver to push people away from the game.
Influence. As players adventure and complete their day-to-day goals, their experience is being captured by a node through its zone of influence. As players level up, so do these nodes. With enough experience, a node might become a village or a city.
There's a lot of those.
With enough experience, even a metropolis. As these population centers open up, players can establish citizenship through in-game node housing, instance housing, or our freehold system. So this node system will basically be dividing the overworld into specific chunks, and your actions within the zones of influence of a node will improve it or damage it, essentially making the entire overworld a massive territory control game. What happens if you max out a node and build a house and then someone else damages the node? Do you lose your house? We'll have to find out. Likely yes, because of the consequences they faced earlier. The Kickstarter continues and lists the 4 races: humans, elves, orcs and dwarves, although they've all been given suitably fantasy-sounding names, and sub-races. Then below that you've got the 8 archetype classes: tanks, mages,
they forgot the
fighters,
Talnar.
rogues, summoners, rangers and bards. Now it seems this is the Kickstarter that people wanted, because it raised over 3 million in funding, and the Ashes of Creation team have gone on record through interviews and Reddit posts stating they've had several million more added through private investors, so the project has a lot of money behind it. Not quite the hundreds of millions of the larger scale MMOs, but definitely enough to make a solid game. Now below that we've got a list of MMOs the team has worked on before, including Star Wars Galaxies, EverQuest, PlanetSide, EverQuest Next, EverQuest 2 and the XCOM series. So the team working on Ashes of Creation seem to have some experience behind them, so let's meet the team. Stephen Shariff is the founder and creative director of Intrepid. His LinkedIn page describes his experience as CEO of Intrepid, with the position responsibility of revitalizing the MMORPG genre. There is no other experience listed. The guy may have had jobs before, but he's choosing not to list them. The lead designer is Jeff Bard. He's also on LinkedIn, and we can see he spent 5 years working for Sony Online Entertainment as a content designer for EverQuest 2, where he focused on writing the gameplay story narrative and quest hooks. He says he wrote over 200 quests. The chief financial officer is John Moore. His LinkedIn page shows his only position for the last 6 years is being chief financial officer of Intrepid. The lead programmer is Kevin McPherson. This guy has worked as a senior programmer on EverQuest, EverQuest 2, PlanetSide 2 and Vanguard Saga of Heroes. And the lead architect is Mark Stork, who has many years experience in the games industry, but only one named specific game on his LinkedIn page, the iPhone and iPad game Retro Assault Challenge. There are more team members, but this at least shows the people making this do have some experience.
Oh, is it?
Not only the video game industry, but also the MMORPG industry specifically. My only concern so far is that all the experience
I've never actually explored the Kickstarter page for this.
Focused, with EverQuest
I didn't even know it was still
and EverQuest
available.
2 taking up a majority of the team's design history. Now this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I've played those games, and EverQuest was a phenomenal MMORPG for the time. It dominated the MMORPG landscape for many years. It essentially wrote the book on what a good 3D MMORPG or a successful 3D MMORPG could be, a social focused MMO, and it was the king essentially up until World of Warcraft dethroned it in 2004. And many players do claim that they want to return to the design philosophy of placing social interaction at the very, very top, focusing on player interaction instead of solo-focused theme park-style gameplay.
Which is what Ash's goals
is
as well.
MMORPG demographic, the average player, that's now shifted to favour solo players. The MMORPG is no longer as niche as it was back then, and is now a much more general gameplay genre. People are playing the MMO who would have never played EverQuest precisely because they can play it solo, or it's much more casual friendly. The MMORPG needs to provide tools for solo players to have a fulfilling experience and to keep up with groups, because if an MMO doesn't do that, it won't survive. Now you could argue that this solo-focused design has effectively shifted MMORPGs away.
I do agree with that statement to an extent. Ashes is aiming to be, and I've expressed this many times now as one of my chief concerns about the game, it is so community focused that if you do not have a thriving active community on a server, the game will not function. The mechanics within the game will not work properly without the numbers behind them to drive it. He's made a really good point. I've played like this myself a lot. If I don't have the ability to just hop on my computer, sit down for like 2 hours, and just go out and play on my own without having the need or being forced to interact with other people just to play the game, that's going to push solo players away. Depending on what you want to do in the game, you will, I believe you will have the ability to do that in Ashes, but you will be very restricted from a lot of aspects of the game if you're not part of a community or not actively seeking interaction and community. I've never played an MMO as a solo player. I've always been a community player. I've done both. I like my solo time, no doubt. I do both as well, right? There are times when I really enjoy sitting down with a good group of friends and smashing out a raid or smashing out a dungeon or just going to do some PvP, and it's super casual and you're just shooting the shit. Maybe knock back a couple drinks and just have fun, right? But I also like to just sometimes sit down and it's like, you know what? I've had a long day. I'm mentally done. I just want to zone out in my game for a couple hours before I crash. And then I'm looking for more of a solo thing because I just don't want to people anymore, you know? I need MMOs, need both. I love me some solo content and watch Netflix on the side. Absolutely. The only solo play I do is crafting, gathering, and decorating. And that is something that's going to be very soloable, right? Even just going out farming to kill monsters, crafting. There's a lot of things I think you'll be able to do solo. And you know what? Maybe if you're in a guild with a group of people and you're just going to go do a dungeon that you guys have cleared a few times, you can be like, guys, I'm not going to be on comms. I just don't want to people. Let's just go in and do our thing. We all know what to do. No, I know there's not going to be any looking for group function. I hope that there's at least a chat channel that is at least node wide or zone of influence wide, that you can be like, hey, I'm looking for a group to go and do this content. Any takers? I'm hoping there's at least that. And I do expect there will be. It still requires you to do a little bit of interaction, but no, I'm okay with there no looking for group like dungeon queue finder, as long as there is a means to reach out to a large majority of people that are within the area that is feasible to go, since there's no fast travel or anything like that, right? There's no need to find somebody on the other side of the world to group with. If there's no fast travel, no way of them getting there within the hour, you know? And then raid or dungeon with folks at other times. But if you visit a tavern, it sounds like there will be groups forming around these places outside of guilds. Yep. That has been a chief concern of mine, is that if the game does not have enough people in it, certain functions in the game will not work because there's not enough people to do them.
From what they started as, which was social facilitators, social hubs, and moved the MMO more toward solo-focused single-player gameplay. And there's absolutely an argument to be made both for and against, the pros and cons of that. But you do need to understand the demographic of the player base has changed substantially. So I really hope they're able to appeal to enough people to keep an MMORPG alive. Because remember, for an MMO to succeed, you need to reach a critical mass of players, both on release and then going forward as the game continues to be updated,
cold coffee,
continues
yum.
to be expanded. And that becomes harder and harder and harder to do the more niche you make your gameplay. You need to appeal to as broad a possible an audience for an MMO to survive. So we've got a highly funded Kickstarter with a relatively experienced, if somewhat old-school focused team behind it, with a lot of very impressive gameplay design promises.
I agree 100%. That statement is the post-launch fall off in player count when the solo players from WoW realize this isn't their kind of game is going to be rough on server pops. Absolutely. Not just from WoW, but from a lot of other types of games. Might not necessarily be MMOs, and they might be hyped for what this game can be. I feel like the older MMO community, this game is going to really appeal to that crowd, versus the younger generation of more instant gratification. That type of crowd, this game is really not going to appeal to. That being said, there are so many systems within Ashes and so many different ways to play the game that you are going to be able to, you can find your own niche within the game. You don't have to enjoy every aspect of it. As long as you enjoy some aspects of it, this could be the game for you. There's so many different things that you can do and focus on. It doesn't have to be combat related. You could essentially play just a non-combat character within the game and still have a fulfilling game experience, depending on what your playstyle is, what your niche is, what you enjoy doing. So I think Ashes he's talking about appealing to certain demographics. I don't think Ash's focus is too narrow. If anything, I think it's so broad that it's going to be intimidating to a lot of newer players. A lot of old school players waiting to find a game. I feel they will slowly find Ashes. I think so. I think a lot of people. I know server transfers aren't going to be a thing, but Intrepid needs to be very, very on top of server populations and merging servers when necessary. They 100% need to be on top of that. Those who grew up on the theme parks are going to feel some sort of struggle with the sandbox. Yeah. I think people that are really, really ingrained in like retail WoW right now, I'm going to pick on that as an example. That crowd is not going to enjoy Ashes unless they're just there kind of killing time waiting for something like Ashes with the understanding of the differences in the game. That's kind of why I went back to WoW Classic, because a lot of that was very bare bones and didn't have all of those super fancy perks or features in the game. And it gave you that more raw experience that you're going to have in Ashes. It required a little bit more community to do things. Yes, you could go out and solo things, but if you wanted to dungeon or whatever, yeah, you needed to find a group. Unless you're a mage in AoE farming, but yeah. I'm not trying to dunk on WoW. No, neither am I. Like, I'm not trying to dunk on the game. Obviously, it's done very well. It's a very successful game, and that is for a good reason.
What the general public opinion of the project has been so far. MMORPG YouTuber The Lazy Peon has covered it extensively and referred to it as genuinely the most exciting upcoming MMORPG. MMO YouTuber Kira TV made a video explaining how it was the hype MMORPG. Hakurai made a video showing how it could revolutionize the MMORPG genre, then another calling it the MMORPG savior. And website Massively OP reported on how the community hype for the game is reaching an absolute fever pitch. So it has reached insane levels of hype, and player expectations for this game are sky high, with many people making the bold claim it will save the MMO genre. So I guess I'll have to go against the grain somewhat and say this.
Before he says what he has to say, yes, there is a lot of community hype, but let's look at the statement for a second. This is the savior of the MMORPG. Take it with a grain of salt and understand when somebody says that, they're not saying it that they might be so disillusioned to say that it's going to be the MMO savior for everybody. But what it is it's the MMO savior to them. This genre is ruined for me. It has disappointed me. Ashes of Creation is going to be what saves the genre for me. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm paraphrasing. That's the difference here. Yes, a lot of those YouTube videos that he was showcasing is talking about the hype of the game, because there is hype about this game. There's going to be hype about this game. Do we need to keep our expectations in check? Absolutely. But the hype is real. I'm excited as anyone for this game, but my expectations right now are low. My hope is high, expectations low. And that's the key message. That's the key takeaway I'm getting from this video. And just in general, be as hyped as you want. Be as excited as you want. There's nothing wrong with that. But keep your expectations low so that you are pleasantly surprised when it comes out, rather than disappointed because it didn't achieve all the things it set out to achieve the exact way that you thought that it was going to happen. With the Alpha 1 going into non-NDA so that we can stream it and do videos on it starting in a month, that is going to help to really set and temper expectations.
Don't board the hype train, because it never stops where you think it's going to stop. I'm not saying Ashes of Creation isn't going to be good. It could be good. It could be great. We'll look at some gameplay in a moment. We'll evaluate the quality of it. But it will not live up to the hype that you are building around it, no matter how good it is. If you expect something to be a 5 out of 10, and it releases and it's an 8 out of 10, you're pleasantly surprised. It did better than you expected it to do. It surpassed your expectations. But if you expect something to be a 10 out of 10, and it releases as a 9 out of 10, despite the fact it's actually objectively better than the 8 out of 10, you are then disappointed, despite the fact it's actually better.
This is exactly what I'm saying. Temper your expectations. But I disagree that you shouldn't be excited about it.
Game you are unhappy.
We need hope. We need something to look forward to, right?
What it was going to be in your own mind. If Ashes of Creation releases and it's an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 on anyone's scale, fantastic. It'll be an extremely good MMORPG. I'm excited to play it. The issue we're seeing now, and the issue that's being created by the players, is everyone's expecting it to be this unrivaled 11 out of 10 masterpiece, a single shining beacon in the MMORPG landscape. And anything less than perfection is going to be seen as unacceptable. And this is just not a believable or a safe place.
He is taking it to an extreme. I agree.
It even releases.
His general point is not wrong, but I think he is taking it to the same extreme that other people are going to the extreme in the other way with hype, right?
Footage. We see a standard third-person camera, health and mana of the player to the bottom left, abilities listed in hotkeys along the bottom, enemy health when in combat shown to the top.
Oh, I was like, wait, is that my mouse on the screen? No, it's his.
High polygon count, nice explosions and water effects, particle effects on display as earth magic.
Oh, absolutely. I agree, OG. I agree.
Standard, high-quality, third-person action game. Over on the Ashes of Creation YouTube channel, we've got a developer Q&A with some more recent but still alpha gameplay footage. The video is an hour long, so I watched it, and here's the highlights. 16 minutes in, we see some lovely lighting and particle effects with the blue swirling vortex. 17 minutes in, we get a look at some mounts, with all the devs riding a two-tailed black-furred fox-like thing. 26 minutes in, we see group combat. Lovely particle effects, the enemy uses an
AoE, grumpy guy.
Briefly shows a red circle on the floor and players can dodge out the way, the enemy drops some loot and players can roll need or greed.
I mean, I might cry a little bit as a content creator. I've put a lot of stock into this as being kind of my future for content.
Created aspect they've been heavily pushing, the main old school design.
I'll be honest, I don't know what I'll do.
Shown is good but nothing groundbreaking. Where is this player controlled node system they've been relying on so heavily? While searching the official Ashes of Creation YouTube channel, the last mention of nodes I can find, specifically nodes, is 2 years ago. So I checked the Ashes of Creation subreddit, and before I could even search for the word node, I see these two threads, one explaining how the game is still years away from a full release, and one begging people not to pre-order because you know how bad pre-orders can go. Searching for node on the subreddit links us to this YouTube video with some more alpha footage of the exact moment a node levels up. At 48 minutes and 20 seconds into this developer video, you can see the moment in this small settlement. It instantly upgrades to a fortified city. It's not a slow building process, it's an immediate switch, and any player standing where a new asset is about to be placed, as the developer is in this video, is warped out, using the developer's words, of that place and put next to wherever they were standing. The video is from March 2020, so we can see the node system does in theory work. It's just an immediate upgrade from rank A to rank B and an immediate graphical change. We've also got multiple YouTube channels now springing up, all dedicated to covering Ashes of Creation gameplay and class releases, likely all banking on it being the next big thing and riding that wave. So where does this all leave us now? We've seen proof of third-person gameplay, we've seen some nice graphics, we've seen the node system even does, in practice, work.
Damn, Narc's doing good, eh?
All of that, and all the bold claims the game is still making about revolutionizing the genre, where are we now? If you're excited for Ashes of Creation to release, then I'm excited for you.
I do take issue with him objecting to how the node instantly transforms. That upgrade is a long time coming. You just happen to be there when it switched. That's expected, right? Like, and that was kind of the point that I took away from that as well. Is it's no small feat to level up a node. You probably have an idea of when it's going to level up, especially outside of like the first 2 stages. It takes a lot of effort. If it's going to level up instantaneously, I'm okay with that. And exactly, Emerson, that was the other point, is who's to say that's the final iteration of that design? It's, as he said, it's not even alpha. He said it was alpha. This is pre-alpha. That's just the first pass of the system. Like, because yeah, building the assets to show the development of the node to the next level and incorporating that over X amount of time, that's a lot of extra work and polish to go into the game that is not necessary at this stage of development process. That's a beta 1, beta 2. development process. That's not an alpha 1 or pre-alpha as what he's watching process. Oversimplifying and overhyping his own content here needs more actual research and reality on where the game is actually at and what will continue to change. Perhaps. I think he is definitely on, like, he's talking about overhyping Ashes, and he is very much on the opposite end of the spectrum about how you really shouldn't be doing that. So it's a lot of some of the points he's making in this game is very accurate. Okay. His video is not bad. Let me put it that way. His video is not bad. I do not want to say that. I think he is going to the extremes on some of his points. At the same time, the underlying point that he is trying to make, you take the flair and flavor off of it, are valid points. They're very valid points. The ultimate message here is overhyping the game can lead to expectations being unreasonably high. And therefore, when the game delivers, as he said, if you're expecting a 10 out of 10 and it drops at a 9 out of 10, that's a very good game, objectively speaking. But if your expectations are above that and it comes in below, then yeah, there's going to be an element of disappointment there. And a lot of people are going to be turned away from the game because of that, because it didn't meet their expectations. So he's making a very good sub point here, and I don't want to take away from that. Josh is looking at the game at face value from info available from Intrepid themselves. Goal of it is just to tell people to temper expectations, not a review or info dump. More or less. He is, but at the same time, Zenfarty, he is dumping info. And I feel like he's doing it out of context or without the understanding of the game. Well, I shouldn't say understanding, but he's not actively portraying where the game is in the development cycle. He did mention it was in alpha, but that was actually wrong. It's pre-alpha, and he's not iterating that when he should be, in my opinion. Today's Gersha, he does have some good points, and yes, he is going to the extreme for some points.
But I also want to issue a call to reason. It's still early days in the development, and while Ashes of Creation is probably going to be good, if it follows player feedback and it follows a decent development schedule,
there it is.
It might even be great if they take their time and make the best game they possibly can. Will it be able to stand among the big five? Will it be able to stand up there with the Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy XIV or RuneScape? Who knows at this moment? The single biggest issue the game is facing right now is not developer contact. It's not updates. It's not communication. It's player expectations and the unrealistic level being placed upon it. Please remember games like No Man's Sky, Cyberpunk, WildStar, Duke Nukem Forever, the first version of Final Fantasy XIV, first few months of the Elder Scrolls Online, Spore, Fable, Diablo 3, hell, even Guild Wars 2, when it released, it was hyped beyond belief and then met with disappointment despite being a very good game. When you overhype games, you create a situation where even if the game is great, it's never as great as you thought it would be in your mind, and you're always disappointed because
Diablo 3 was a good
Ashes
reference.
of Creation has so far shown us
It may have been hyped, I don't know, but it did not release as a good game.
Make it a reality, and they've been releasing
It released terrible
updates
game.
showing us progress. So unlike most Kickstarter MMOs, I believe this one will actually eventually end up existing. It's got some pretty lofty aspirations, and claiming it's going to revitalise the genre, that's bordering on arrogant. But it probably will be a decent game. But stop hyping it up, and you're probably going to enjoy it a hell of a lot more. You know how games like Valheim just came out of nowhere, ended up being quite good, and we all liked them? That's because no one expected it to be perfect. We were just happy with a really good game. If we keep expecting Ashes of Creation to be the saviour, we're going to be disappointed. The player interaction that it's discussed, the building, the establishing of trade routes, the cities and the player creations, that does concern me. We've seen things like this in Albion Online, where it often means higher level players hang out at the PvP zones and gank the new players the moment they step into any kind of PvP territory. We've seen in Shroud of the Avatar how when you give players the ability to construct anything, they just make garish monstrosities in the overworld, immersion-breaking structures. And honestly, nothing I've seen from the pre-alpha or the alpha footage is world-changing. It's good. We've got third-person action camera, action combat, hotkey abilities. We've got nice graphics, a good node system. They've shown it works. But nothing has shown me they'll reinvent the wheel. What they have so far is a very solid...
They're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Sits nicely within the MMORPG framework and will
trying to redefine the
find
wheel.
a hard core of players when
That's
it
it. That's the
releases.
key difference.
They've got a very high-quality product, but they're not revolutionizing the genre. And to think that they're going to on release is setting yourself up for a disappointment. I'm not saying don't look forward to it. I want you to be excited for things. Hell, I'm excited for it. I'm saying approach it with grounded optimism, with a healthy skepticism toward any claim that is made. Admire it for being ambitious and admire it for being pretty. It looks good.
I saw the Lazy Peem video. I walked away from the video thinking, if this game can deliver on a quarter of its promises, it'll be the game to bring me back into the MMO. Since that initial thought, I've been pleasantly surprised with what I've seen thus far, though my expectation is that there is something promised that will definitely miss the mark. I just hope it's not caravans. Yeah. That's very true, right? Like, and I feel like he could have done away with a large part of this video and still got the message across, because that last chunk that we just watched, I feel like he hit the nail on the head with what he said. And we do need to temper our expectations. The hype is there. Okay. Hype is there. It's going to be there. As long as there's content creators out there, hype is going to be there. Okay. Because that's what we do. If I was just sitting here being Debbie Downer about everything, you guys probably wouldn't want to hang around and have a conversation and talk about things and shoot the shit and laugh, you know? So the hype is real. We do need to temper expectations. They have made lofty promises to revitalize the MMO genre. The MMO genre is dying. It's not what it used to be. Ashes is trying to incorporate a lot of what has been successful in the past while putting in a few extra things to really make it a long-lasting end game. And I feel like as long as they can hit those fundamentals, all the extra flavor that they're wanting to put on top that are in those promises, even if they miss the mark on some of those, or if they're not able to hit them by the time the game gets released, I feel like for the most part, people will be okay with that. We want the node system to be functional. We want the crafting system to be functional. We want combat to feel really good. We don't want just tank and spank bosses everywhere. If they can execute on these basic fundamentals, along with the other things about player agency and the importance of sound decision making and looking really good, we're going to be very happy with that as a core gameplay. If that was how this game released right now, I think 99% of the people that are hyped about Ashes would be very happy with that. My one thing I dislike about trend gamers, why do you have to reinvent the wheel constantly? I don't think they're trying to reinvent the wheel. I think they're trying to redefine the wheel. The wheel is MMOs. They're just trying to make this different. They're trying to take everything that was successful with previous MMOs, incorporate that to an extent, and put their own spin on it, their own flavor on it, so that it becomes a living, breathing world. Take all those old games, combine them into something with what we have now available that we can achieve with our current technology. That being said, the studio, Intrepid, is doing a good job to try and temper expectations around the game. They are doing a good job that way. This is 100% community, and he is speaking to that. He is speaking 100% to the community as far as expectations go and managing those expectations. But it is on the individual to, as excited as you are at the potential of what this game could be, to manage your own expectations. As many of you guys have said here in chat, we're all super excited about this game. If it released and only was able to, yes, achieve a quarter of what was promised, that's on us to manage that. Steven responded in the YouTube comments if I recall. All right, we'll have a look after. What does he say? Intrepid, stop making so much hype. Exactly, right? This is not the studio at all. And if anything, the studio is trying to do a really good job about controlling people's hype and expectations. And this is the risk, right? This is the risk with having the open development. If you're going to place any fault on the studio, that's the only thing that you could do, is that it's a byproduct of the open development process. But at the same time, that open development process is what allows player feedback and allows small tweaks and adjustments to the vision to be made. But They have a vision and they are very good at sticking to it. They're aware of scope creep.
Not until it's been released for a few months or a few years and it's settled into its actual place within the MMORPG sphere. Let it release, let the players evaluate it and see where they think it belongs in the tier of quality, and then let it continue to have a life as long as it can sustain. Yeah, it's not going to be released for a few more years yet, and maybe it's going to be here to stay. Who knows? Hopefully it won't be another flash in the pan. But you're not helping anyone by hyping it up as the next big thing before it's even released. Remember that everyone was super hyped for Albion Online, and while that has found a substantial and hardcore player base and is still definitely a healthy population size, it's not the world-dominating force that everyone claimed that it would be. So I say again, look forward to Ashes of Creation, but don't board the hype train.
I don't like that statement.
I look forward to playing Ashes of Creation on release. I wish the devs all the best, and hopefully I'll keep up with its development cycle. But I'm keeping my expectations.
I don't like that statement to not board the hype train.
Tempered. And unless
just do it objectively.
I suggest you do the same.
Be excited, be happy for the game, get involved with the development process.
Let me know in the comments below, and
doesn't necessarily mean think it's the end-all be-all of all games, right? Okay, so yeah, we do have a response from Steven here, so let's read it here and see. Hey Josh, appreciate the vid. I tend to agree that in most cases, hyping a game in development can raise expectations to unattainable heights and ultimately negatively impact the impression upon release of a game. With that being said, though, I would caveat there is a clear distinction between hype and excitement. Players should feel comfortable in expressing their excitement for a game or company based on solid reasons. Whether that excitement is for things like graphics, designs, gameplay, philosophy, customer service, community interaction, transparency, etc. When projects get this type of support and feedback from fans, it helps the development by motivating the developers and, dare I say, the industry in a few ways. Consumers, aka players, have a very powerful voice when it comes to expressing their content or discontent with the direction of a genre or project. And it's important to use that voice so companies can navigate better when catering gaming experiences for their audiences. So in summary, tempering expectations can be a good thing, but don't be afraid to express your excitement or support for projects that you feel are doing a good job in specific areas. And he said exactly what we've been preaching this whole time. There you go, guys. That was this one. This was a much longer take on this video than I was expecting, but I feel like it was it was a worthy watch and a worthy discussion. I'm happy I watched it with you guys. And yeah, sound off in the comments below what your thoughts are.